What's going on, football fans? It's me, J.R. Clark, back again with another Pound for Pound ATL. Joined as always by my main man, Jonathan Holder. Jonathan, what's going on, brother?
Man, it is a beautiful day. Not looking forward to the weekend where it's going to be nothing but rain. So I'm
Yeah,
just
it's gonna be nasty.
trying to enjoy the day as best I can today, and buckle down for the weekend.
Yeah, they are definitely on that. Like enjoying the weather that we got here on a Thursday afternoon when we're recording this. Um, but yeah, by the time y'all see this on Saturday, it's probably gonna be yucky and nasty.
Yep, yep,
So here tonight we are in our second installment or no third
yeah,
installment of the draft prospect series. We've been giving it to y'all in groups this time around instead of just like one player here, one player there. Just been kind of looking at it as in a position chunk. We've covered the skill guys and the O line. Now it's time to turn our attention to the defensive line, and of course we will start with the front seven, the
hmm
guys whose job is it to truly make a quarterback's life, a nightmare, in a sense. That these
yep,
guys who, you can consider to be like fire breathers, whether they're coming off the edge or blitzing from the next level. Um,
yep.
this is some of the guys that we're looking at today. Um, so I guess without much further ado, we might as well jump into this. And the first guy that I have on my list, um, I'm gonna start with my guys first. I guess we should have started with yours because yours are the more defensive line, but I guess it doesn't really
Nah,
matter.
it's fine. We're
Uh,
we're doing we're doing defensive line, linebackers, like I said,
right,
front
exactly.
seven. So like they're all at some point or another they're going to try to get at the quarterback. So
Exactly, and especially the guys that we're looking at. The
yeah,
first guy up for me, as you can see, is DeMarvin Overshone, which, if I'm not mistaken, has a top 30 visit with the Atlanta Falcons, which is interesting because he is a like 6'4", no 6'3", almost 6'4", and he stands at like 230, 235. So he's a sideline to sideline kind of guy. He's got some real good speed. Uh, has the ability to like run and chase, as they say. Uh, you can tell with the tackles for loss. He's got 30 tackles for loss in his career of, I think he's 3 years at Texas, 2 or 3 years starting. Uh,
he's
but
got
the
like 42 games. He's been in quite a few.
right, yeah. So that would be about 3, maybe even 4 years. I should see. Yeah, no. Okay, I had him mixed up with my next guy in a sense. He is a fifth year senior.
Okay.
So yeah, he's a fifth year senior. He had two pass breakups, no interceptions, but um, a 93.7 passer rating when folks are targeting him. He also tallied 23 pressures, which included 15 QB hurries, 5 hits, and 3 sacks this past season. So he's a very athletic linebacker. The games that I watched of him, I didn't see him like rush the passer a ton, but he did look real good on blitzes when they sent him, and I think that that's how he could be used in Atlanta, especially with the guys that we already have in Anderson and Caden Ellis and Michael Walker. I mean, we're going to have to add to the linebacker room, in my opinion, because right now I think you only have like three, maybe four guys, and
Mhm.
one of them is a core special teamer. Um,
Yep.
so you're gonna have
And we
you're
and
gonna
we
want to go ahead.
Yeah, and we don't have a ton of like open spots like post draft. Uh,
Mhm.
Post draft, I think as it stands right now, I think we have a total of like 5 slots. If you assuming that we draft we use every pick that we've got, and we don't get any more, we don't give away some in trade ups or anything like that. I think as it stands right now, we have enough we have like 5 spots open.
Right. So yeah, I mean they still very well could add a linebacker in free agency, but I think linebacker right now is a light position as far as like bodies, and
Yeah.
I really think Overshone showing the ability that he has. Um, he I think he could add well to the linebacker room. He does like struggle on shedding blocks
Mhm.
once people get on him, and I think that's because of his like more of a slender frame. But yet, I think what like Ryan Nielsen is trying to build, or at least what it appears to be, is he wants his linebackers to be able to run free. It looks like he's building a big line in front of them. So if that's the case, if they can keep uh, Overshown clean, then he has the IQ, the ability to diagnose where the plays are going, and meet the guys in the backfield, and also you know can get home on blitzes.
Yep. That
Um,
and that's the big thing. Like when you have a guy like this, you got to keep him clean.
yeah,
He's just now maybe he get into the league a couple years, bulk up a little bit more. Maybe he can be better at shedding blocks
right.
later on down the line. But yeah, this guy, like just from looking at him, yeah, he's definitely a guy that you want him to go like be hitting that line full tilt, not having to try to get past other guys to get to the
No,
line.
no, no, no. He has like good length and good initial quickness. Like his burst is there when he does like recognize a play and diagnose it. Then like that that initial burst to get there is evident on film. Um, and also, with all those like arm bands and leg bands that he has on, he's really not hard to spot either. I wonder if they're going to let him continue doing that in the league. I don't see many guys in the league with those with all that arm arm wear on him.
Yeah. Yep.
So
That's a lot.
yeah, he even has about that many on like one of his legs as well. I'm like, what do you? I do not understand that whatsoever. But yeah, Overshown is a guy who's athletic and I think could fit like the linebacker profile that Nielsen might be wanting, as far as like what he's shown in New Orleans to bringing Caden Ellis over here. My next guy, speaking of Caden Ellis, I really think could be like Caden Ellis's clone, or maybe even a more athletic version of Caden Ellis, and that's Nick Herbig out of Wisconsin. It seems like every year Wisconsin has a a linebacker that is a rush linebacker, an on ball linebacker, however you want to phrase it, that I end up like falling in love with, and Nick Herbig is yet another example of that. With his 21 total sacks, 36 tackles for loss, and 95 solo tackles in his career at Wisconsin, he was their most productive rusher this past year. Now he's a little smaller at the like height wise. He's 6'2", but he's 240, so he's packing a
Mhm.
little bit more weight behind him. Not necessarily big enough to make him a full time edge rusher,
Yeah.
and I don't think you would want to because he does well in coverage. So you would be like losing some of his versatility if you were just to put him on the edge. I don't think he would constantly win on the edge. Um, Looks real good in zone coverage. I saw that quite a bit in the games that I've watched against him. Um, he went toe to toe with Dewan Jones and Paris Johnson Jr. in of Ohio State, which is probably like the stiffest competition that he faced that I watched,
Yeah.
and didn't look. I mean, look, it's Paris Johnson Jr. and Dewan Jones. Those guys are some of the best tackles in this particular draft. So like he didn't win a ton, but he didn't look completely outclassed. If that makes any sense.
Yeah. Yeah. He's being an undersized guy, doesn't really matter how like strong you are and stuff like that. You up against some of these guys like the Paris Johnson Juniors and Dewan Jones of the world, and then you get to the NFL and like even
They're
the
all
worst tackle, yeah,
that.
even the worst tackle in the league is better than 90% of the guys that he faced in college or higher. those guys are the kind of guys where if they get clamped on, especially for a guy his size, it's going to be really hard to disengage,
Right.
just in general. So his whole goal should be, I don't want your hands on me at all.
Right.
Um,
And
so
and again with the way, like, watching the college game right now, it seems like outside of the and even at some of the blue blood programs, I mean, if you look at how, Will Anderson was used at Alabama and how Nolan Smith was used at Georgia, like, these guys aren't necessarily just lined up on the edge and asked to beat the tackle.
yep,
You know, these defensive coordinators are getting just as creative with how to use guys like this as offensive coordinators are in, like, motioning out receivers and doing all this other stuff. I mean, like these guys rush from so many different platforms.
yep,
Whether it's from the second level or like a wide nine or, in a like mugged up look at the line of scrimmage, and making it really hard for these quarterbacks to, like, diagnose where the rush is coming from. And with a guy like Herbig, who is as good as he is in coverage, isn't a liability in coverage, it makes it even tougher. I can imagine, like, you put out like Herbig and Ellis and Troy Anderson, in a three linebacker look, you don't have a clue which one of those guys is going to be coming at you, because
exactly.
all of them, could be coming, or any number of them could be dropping. And that seems to be, the chess piece in the games that I watched of New Orleans last year. And if Ryan Nielsen was in charge of the pressure packages, as far as one of his main roles as DC, I could definitely see him falling in love with a guy like Herbig, who is a, buzzsaw of a player. Like I said, the quintessential, like, Wisconsin linebacker, in the
Yep.
vein of TJ Watt. I don't think he is TJ Watt, but some of the things that excited me about TJ Watt excite me about this guy.
Well, I mean, look, this guy, I'm not sitting here trying to say like, oh, this or even Overshown are the next like this guy, but they're comparable in like size, height, size as like a Micah Parsons.
Right.
So and now that Micah Parsons has kind of blown up in the league, I guarantee you there's going to be other players or other coaches out there that are looking for the next Micah Parsons.
Of course.
Not saying either one of these guys are it,
Yeah, no,
or
no.
or anything, but these two guys definitely fall into that mold of, yeah, he's a linebacker, but he's just as much a pass rusher as he
Right.
is a coverage guy. And Caden Ellis fits in that mold.
Right.
Really, Troy Anderson could absolutely fill that mold. Um, and he's probably, out of all the guys that we could potentially have coming into the season as at linebacker, he's potentially the most physically gifted of
Oh,
our
Troy Anderson.
linebackers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm really
So
excited. Like, to me, not to completely derail, like, our talk here, but to me, like, Troy Anderson, like, I would imagine I can easily see how, Ryan Nielsen doing what he did with Caden Ellis last year, and seeing what he saw in Caden Ellis, could easily take a look at Troy Anderson and go, this is Caden Ellis 10 times, like, times 10,
yep.
you know, as far as, just raw ability, like size, speed. I'm really excited about Troy Anderson and what he represents and what he brings to the Falcons as far as his second year. Because by the end of the year, he had supplanted, Michael Walker
Yeah.
as, the well, he wasn't the middle linebacker, but I guess you call him the Sam linebacker, strong side linebacker.
Yep.
So yeah, I'm really really excited to see what uh, Troy Anderson brings.
Well, and I'll say this, like, you're gonna have guys like, in our base package, which will probably be some form of nickel.
Hmm.
Base package is probably going to be, you're going to have let's say we were to pick up a Herbig or an Overshown, like they're going to be in there probably as like potential edge guys. Like they're going to move them all around. They're not always going to play in the middle of the field. They're going to sometimes play on the edge. Sometimes they're going to play in coverage from the start. Sometimes they're going to, that's what you want to be able. This is a guy, and Overshown, both are guys that you could look at and say, we don't have to take them off the field, whether it's an obvious passing situation, obvious run situation. They can handle it either way, especially if you talk about maybe having a interior three of say like Jarrett, Onyemata, and Campbell
Right.
that are like pushing things up the middle, and then you get a guy like this or Ebiketie or Malone or Carter coming off the edges. Uh, could be really really awesome to see.
Yeah, and that's the hope, right? Is
Yeah,
that with the bigger defensive line that we potentially are going to be trotting out there, that you can make use of these athletically gifted linebackers who are as equally good rushing the passer as they are dropping into coverage.
yep.
All that does is help your help your defense disguise itself. So that's my two guys. Let's go ahead and move on into get closer to the line of scrimmage with your guys.
Yep.
First up is Zach Harrison.
So Zach Harrison, if we subscribe to the belief that Ryan Nielsen likes bigger defensive ends,
Right.
and that's not just an Allen thing. We don't 100% know that for sure yet because we haven't gone out and gotten any like Calais Campbell. If he's going to be a true defensive end,
Well, yeah, as I was
that's
going to say, the
that
comment
that's
was
a that's a big defensive end.
right.
But I mean, other than that, like we haven't shown anything that says for sure like that's what he wants all the time, every down, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
But if we do subscribe to that, this is a guy that much more fits that mold, right? We're talking a guy who is 6'6", 274 pounds,
That's a big dude.
runs a 4.41 40. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
moving, man.
Yeah, that dude moves around. And you know, the he has that classic frame, like the long arms, explosion, power, ability to close. Um, you know, it's just he's not just a speed guy running, a 4.4 40 or even a 4.5 40 would be fast enough. He's not just a speed guy. He's got the strength. He's got the power to be able to actually bull rush. So guys can't just be like, I just got to get out to my spot.
Right, right, right.
They have to. I could see this guy being a really good like setup rusher where one time he's trying to speed rush around the edge, and then he pulls up and does like a interior move or bull rushes or does different things like that, and he keeps that tackle on his toes, so he can't just see. I'm either looking for a speed rush or I'm looking for a stunt. You know,
Hmm.
and that's kind of been the problem. Like our most recent dominant pass rusher was Vic Beasley in what was that 2016?
2016. Yeah.
Yeah, 2016. And but when you go back and watch that tape of Beasley that year, like the majority of his sacks didn't come off, kind of like what we talked about with Will Anderson. And I'm not saying Will Anderson's going to be a Vic Beasley. Vic Beasley just didn't have the dog in him.
Right. I think that was
Will,
the
Will,
biggest. Yeah, I think that was the biggest problem with Vic.
but like a guy like Will Anderson is kind of used the same way in college. Now in the pros, we'll see how he goes. But Vic Beasley was a guy that the majority of his sacks that year, you go back and look at it, it was all off of like stunts and twists and things like that, or he just flat beat a guy around the edge.
Right.
If he just tried to straight rush a guy with his speed and he didn't beat him with his speed, he was kind of done.
Yeah, that was
He
as far as Will Anderson goes, I get it. He's a top 10 talent easily for sure. But when I watch the tape, you know, the games that I watched, I'm not going to sit here and try to tell anybody that I've watched all the games that he's
Yeah,
played because I haven't. I randomly picked 3 different games against opponents that I think should give somebody, a good fight because that's what I want to see. And most of the time I did not, I just didn't see him straight up and down beat a tackle. I'm not saying he can't, pretty sure he can, but the way he was used and how he was asked to rush, it was all from like like I was saying earlier with the other guys from the weird platforms or the
yep,
non-traditional platforms. Where
yeah,
Zach Harrison seems like a guy who is going to rush from your traditional platform
yeah.
and like has the size and the speed to be able to do it at the NFL level.
He absolutely does. Now, the one one of the weaker parts of his game is actually his first step. Doesn't have he's not consistently the first player off the snap.
Right.
But what he kind of balances that out a little bit somewhat with really good like snap anticipation.
Mm,
And so he uses some of that to kind of negate that a little bit. But yeah, he's not like the most twitchiest guy out there.
right. He ain't
Uh,
twitched up, as they say.
no, no. But you know, in a straight line, the guy is fast. He's got good quickness with some good strong hands on the inside. So he's a I could absolutely see this guy. Because he could probably pack on a little bit more to his frame, probably get up in like the low 280s.
Right.
Um, and if he gets there, he could absolutely be a Michael Bennett type that moves inside on like
On
third down and
passing downs or
long.
whatever.
Yeah, you move him inside, and he becomes a guy that, while maybe some tackles, especially a left tackle, maybe not right so much right tackles, but the tackles in general, maybe are quicker and can they can handle him in a better position. You get him inside on guards who are not really used to that, and he can become much more of an issue there as far as a penetrating force. And I can see that being a thing that is can become good at as he gets into the league more and more.
I was about to say he's a guy that I've consistently heard like he's got better football ahead of him. Uh,
Yes.
and so like he's still like the ceiling is a little higher for
Well,
him
the good
than where he's going to go initially.
yeah, well, and the good thing about him is when you watch him, he doesn't just do the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
We see this a lot with a lot of collegiate defensive ends. Is once they find something that works, chances are it probably works on a lot of the guys, unless you're
Yeah.
playing super high level competition consistently. You're gonna run into a situation where the guys that are getting drafted, they're gonna find that one thing that they're really good at, and they're gonna probably beat most of the guys they get across from, and they use it over and over and over and over and over again
Right.
because and I
I
get
mean,
that.
I'll say
But
this as much as I like, not a huge fan of the school mainly, but like Ohio State knows how to produce some pass rushers. They
yes.
have for years. And not
Yep.
even just the big names. You got the Bosa brothers, Chase Young, but there's also like uh, Browner, I think was his name. I'm trying to remember his first name. That or Baron was it Baron Browner? I can't remember. But there was like a lower ranked, like pass rusher that hit the league that was just a very solid guy, like a very solid part of a rotation. And I think that's the floor for Zach Harrison is a solid part of a rotation.
Yep.
Um, a
He's a
guy,
guy. He's a guy you bring in. He will contribute. He
right,
may not be the biggest contributor,
right,
but he's a guy that you put him on the field, and you put him on there with Grady Jarrett, but maybe you take out Onyemata, or
right,
you give Calais Campbell a breather, and this guy comes in, and while he's not gonna maybe at this point in his career, maybe we'll see, but maybe won't give you quite the impact of a Calais Campbell, but he will give you a guy that is active. He's tenacious. He doesn't, he doesn't just do one thing, and then if that doesn't work, just kind of
right,
play
kind of
patty
flail
cake.
around. Yeah.
Yeah, he doesn't patty cake after that first. He'll continue to do something to try to get past his blocker. Um, and I think he's a guy that every team needs these guys. You're gonna
Oh yeah,
have
you got to have them.
one. You're gonna have one, and if you're lucky, two, and if you're really lucky, three, like legit top end pass rushers for your team. And then everybody else just has to be, you know, they just have to be productive. So
Right.
you don't
Yep.
so you're not completely
Dropping off the.
nullified when yeah, you're not
Yep.
completely nullified when your big time dudes go off the field. So this is guy worst case scenario. I think this is that kind of guy.
That
So
kind of guy.
he's a guy, you take in the third round, though he may go higher, but I think this guy is like second round, third round at the latest. But this would, in the second round, if let's say we were to trade back and get an extra second, this is a guy that I would maybe think about picking up with that extra second.
Well, I mean that's the whole point of this particular series that we're doing is to bring you some names that, like by this point in the draft cycle, the vast majority of us all know who's the first, second round guys, and
Yeah.
who are the big names. But what we like to try to remind folks is that the draft is 7 rounds.
Yep.
There are it's more than the first round, and you can get solid contributors all over the place. Just like the possibility of our last guy here, who I know
Yep.
for sure has met with the Falcons. I'm not sure
Yes.
about Zach Harris, but I know Yaya Dabi is definitely, or Diaby, or however you say his last name.
Yeah, and this guy definitely he made the freaks list.
Yeah, Feldman's
Uh,
freaks list. Yep.
Yep, ranked 85. He says Darby has emerged, or sorry, Diaby has emerged as a solid player, making 39 tackles and 3 tackles for loss in 2021. The 6'5", 280 pound, which if we look at it now, it shows he's like 260 something, but here it showed 6'5", 280 with an 8'1" wingspan, topping out at 20.8 miles per hour on the GPS. Broad jumps 9 feet 11 inches, and he benches up to 385.
Whew, that is a
So
big,
like this kid
strong fella.
has got really good. Uh, he's got really good like balance and body control. Has a really good spin move that can counter to his speed.
Right.
Natural instincts. Like the guy just seems to know where to go when he needs to. When he needs
Yeah,
to
he's
make a play.
he's a name
Um,
that
Now, the exact opposite of Zach Harrison, the guy does have a really good first step.
right.
Um, and then he can use that to get off the ball, have guys jumping out to get him, and then he has a really good like inside move to counter that as well. So like he's got a really good strong punch. Uh, you know, he makes he's able to shed blocks really well. This guy is long, lean. Let's see. Right now, he says 6'3", 263 is what he weighed in. So he may have
Wonder
lost a
what
little bit
his
of weight since
wonder what his
2021 when
combine
he was on the
numbers were.
freaks list. So yeah, he's got a uh, you know the guy gets off the line quick. He's got really good power to add to that initial quickness. Um, and he has really violent hands. Um, like violent and active hands. And that's probably one of my things that I look at the most when it comes to defensive ends,
Right.
uh, or even defensive tackles, just defensive linemen and pass rushers in general. Is how well do they use their hands? How active are their hands? Are they
Mhm.
constantly, fighting, keeping the hands of the offensive lineman off of them? And this guy is that kind of guy. Um,
Yeah, he's the guy that I need to go back and watch because it caught my eye a little bit down at the Senior Bowl with his workouts there. I know that um, the Falcons talked to him at the combine, I believe, and brought him in for a visit. So they seem to be pretty high on Dobby. So like, and then reading like his scouting summary, uh, he has a 1.56 10-yard split at 260 pounds, uh, which is ridiculous, as was um, Nolan Smith's like 1.52. And Nolan Smith is 25 pounds lighter.
Exactly. That yeah,
So,
I was getting ready to bring that up. Yeah, he's like his quickness for his size is really impressive. Like
yeah,
super impressive. Like the top end speed doesn't match Nolan Smith. But I'm
no,
not like when it comes to defensive linemen, by and
it's
large,
just that first 10 yards is what I
I
need.
don't I don't need to worry about I'm not worried about him running 40 yards down the field.
Right.
Like if he's having run 40 yards down the field, something has gone really wrong.
Yeah, exactly. Something has went awry if he's
So
running 40 yards downfield.
yeah, and like, look, is he going to chase down, Lamar Jackson? No. Um, is he going to chase down 90% or better of the quarterbacks out there? Yeah, he probably will. But this guy is he is a quick twitch, like beat you off the snap kind of guy.
Yeah.
Uh, and that's and I really like watching when I was watching this film. I was like, man, I really like the way this guy plays.
Heck yeah.
And I really like this is definitely a guy I could see. Um, again, like looking at it from a traits perspective, this guy I could see going like the early second. Maybe, but he could fall to like somewhere in the third. But like, I don't necessarily see him coming out of the second round. Uh, I could be, if he drops further than that, I'd be extremely surprised because if for no other reason than just the guys, you know, uh, you know, the immeasurables like the just the
Mhm.
length, and the quickness and those kinds of things like that. Those are the things that are going to draw attention to him, and he's gonna get some. He's definitely going to get some attention. If not day one, day two, and if he doesn't make it, if he makes it past day two, I would be extremely, extremely.
I don't know. This year's like edge class has been an interesting one to really get a bead on because at times, like nobody's talking about BJ Ojolari, which is like extremely interesting because I was for sure like at the early part of this process figured he'd be a first round pass rusher. So like there's guys that are moving up the ranks and like this is just a weird edge class. And I think it's because you don't really have outside of like Will Anderson and maybe Miles Murphy, you don't really have a clear cut blue chip prospect like what we talked about on the show on Tuesday.
Yeah,
So I think that because of that, there's gonna be some guys who a lot of people thought were going to go in the first round that don't go until the end of the second or the top of the third. And then there's vice versa. You're going to have other guys who, go higher. This is pretty much a, what is your type of pass rusher, class. And it's a lot of guys who I think are like Robins to Batmans,
yep.
versus not a lot of Batmans in his class.
I could see the big push early in this draft, first round, second round. Yeah, you're going to have some pass rushers. You're going to have your Will Andersons, Miles Murphy, Tyree Wilson. I think those are your top three pass rushers in the draft right now. Once you get past those guys, it's like some guys have some really good things about them, but also some possible worries. And I think that pretty much goes for the rest of this class, which there's a
Right.
lot of them there, and they're all like they all have talent, but they're just not quite at that level as the top three guys. And any one of them could, explode on the scene in the NFL given the right situation with the right coaching. Do they take to the coaching? All
Yep.
that stuff could happen to any one of these guys. But I think you're going to see like cornerback's going to be a big one taken early. And I think and as far as linemen go, like defensive line, it's probably going to be defensive tackles before you get some of these like tier two pass rushers getting taken.
Yeah. There's a lot of those tier 2 pass rushers. Speaking of cornerbacks, or like cornerbacks and defensive backs, if y'all haven't had a chance to go check out the "What Say You" video we did with Savion Mixon, that's out now. He dropped a lot of really good knowledge, and then
They
that's our last group to talk about, which will be next week. Me and Jonathan will bring you our you know corner like defensive backs that have caught our eye, names that might not be like on your list or might not be aware of on your end. So uh, we try to do the work, so to speak, so you don't have to. So that when these names get called, whether it's a Zach Harrison or a Yaya Dobby or Herbig or Titman last week, when these guys get called, you can be like, oh, okay, yes, I remember hearing something about those guys, and
yep,
that's what we're trying to do with these series, because these guys that we're bringing up aren't necessarily going to be your mainstay guy,
yep,
but could turn into a more than solid contributor for your team for the next, 10, 15 years. It's one of those guys you turn around and look and go, man, he just retired and he's been in the league for 12 plus years, like a Corey Peters did today.
yep.
He announced his retirement, and I was like, man, he's still in the league.
I forgot about him until we played the Cardinals, and I saw
Right,
this past season, and I saw Corey Peterson. I was like, man,
right.
that dude hung around.
Exactly. Like he left here and went to Arizona and found him a home
Yeah,
out
he
in
did.
Arizona. And so like again, the guys that we're talking about aren't necessarily going to be, your JJ Watts or your Lawrence Taylors or whatever, but they're going to be, your guys, that your glue guys, your rotational guys, the guys that if you don't have them on your team is worse off for it.
Yep.
Well, I think that's all we got for you today. If y'all want to follow me on Twitter, I'm at Grim1128, GRIMM1128. Jonathan.
At Jonathan M. Holder, come by and say hi.
Yep. And we'll be live again on Tuesday. And yeah, so y'all just drop by and we'll be talking about the Falcons. And as always, Falcons fans, rise up.
Rise up.